Booktok made me do it. For the past few months, I've been on an experiment. I've been drowning in morally grey men, magical kingdoms, shadow powers, plot twists, and more cheesy writing than I care for. Because I wanted to settle a debate. I wanted to see whether the most hyped fantasy series all over social media were actually worth our time. And today I'm going to tell you whether you should actually read these books or if you could just skip these ones. How cheesy the writing was. It was so cheesy at the start. I couldn't stand it. This series is one of my favorite fantasy series ever. This series was not it for me. If you're new to my channel, hi, I'm Lara. I'm a bookworm and translator, and I've read more books in my life than I could count. And today, we're going to talk about these series that are all over Booktok and Bookstagram. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably seen one of these series somewhere. People swear by them, some people hate them, and today we're going to settle the debate because I've read all of these series, so you don't have to, unless you want to, of course. We're going to start with ACOTAR because ACOTAR was the book that got me back into reading as an adult. As a kid, I used to devour books. I used to read all the time, and I really enjoyed fantasy books until I grew up and I felt the need to be productive with my reading, and I started to read self help and self development, and it just sucked the joy out of reading for me. And I stopped reading until I picked up one day a copy of A Court of Thorns and Roses, and I had no idea what it was, only that it was all over social media. And I was hooked, honestly. This book series is actually really good. It is worth the hype, I would say. It's maybe not Lord of the Rings, but it's actually a very good series, and the characters are very likable. Of course, the first book isn't as good as the others because, as with all series, it takes a bit of time for world building and the characters to grow on you, etc. But it was actually a really good book. I personally really love the last book, A Court of Silver Flames, because it's just more relatable for me. I really like the main character in the last book because in ACOTAR, all of the books except the last one follow the same main character, Feyre. She is the narrator and the main character. But in the last book, the main character switches to her sister, Nesta. And Nesta in all of the series is actually a very unlikable character. And people don't really love her because she does some pretty. But in the last book, she becomes the main character, and we get to see her character development arc. And it's actually really nice. It's so heartwarming because you finally get to understand why she does the things that she does, why she is the way she is, why she's so harsh and cold. And you can empathize with her and you can see her journey as she seeks healing and friendship and community. And it's really nice. So I would recommend that you read this book. Next up, we have Throne of Glass, another series by Sarah J. Maas. This series is one of my favorite fantasy series ever. I would highly recommend it, clearly. This series is a bit longer, it's 8 books, and the first few books aren't as great because Sarah J. Maas actually started writing the series when she was 16, I think, or something like that. So you can really see that in the first few books. But I think this is what makes it even better because you can see the development of the storyline and of the writer as she progresses through the books. So the first book and the final book are worlds apart in terms of maturity and plotline and writing and everything. And I really like this book because it has it all. It has a really good magic system, plot twists, really, really, really good characters. It has romance, but it's not the main focus. Whereas with ACOTAR, it's a romantasy heavy on the romance. Throne of Glass is actually a romantasy, but it's more focused on the fantasy aspect of it. And the romance is there to further the plot. It's not the main focus of the books. And the characters are just so lovable. Even when they're acting in despicable ways, you can always find a way to empathize with them. It's just filled with so many heart-wrenching moments that you would not expect. And it's a really good book. I would really, really recommend reading Throne of Glass. If you read nothing else from this list, you have to read Throne of Glass. That's just my opinion. Next up, still in the Sarah J. Maas world, we have Crescent City. Now, this series was not it for me. I wouldn't really recommend reading it, but you have to because it's a whole universe, the Massverse, and there are so many crossovers and linked storylines across the three series that you kind of have to read it to get the full picture. But I don't know, it was so hyped up that I had so many high hopes for it, especially coming off of Throne of Glass. Throne of Glass was so good. And so I jumped into Crescent City expecting it to be also really good, but I was just disappointed, honestly. To be fair, the first book was actually really good. The first book was good. But then the second book was not that great. And I at several points I just had to push myself to keep going through the book because I don't like to stop books halfway. But it wasn't that good, honestly. I get when authors use mythology and fables and all of that as inspiration and they incorporate it into their world building. I'm all for that retelling of myths and fairy tales. It's just that in Crescent City it felt like all of the world and the universe was taken from other people's stories or from myths and fairy tales, that none of it was actually very original. And it wasn't. Some people swear by Crescent City. Some people are so obsessed with it. It's their favorite book series. It's just, personally, I did not really enjoy it. But of course, I do recommend that you read it because it's part of a bigger picture. Now for the book talk favorite, the Empyrean series or Fourth Wing. This series has a very split, polarized audience. You either adore it and are obsessed with it, or you hate it. For me, going into it, I didn't really have any expectations. I just felt like I was a bit wary of the excessive obsession with it, but I was very curious. When I first started it, honestly, the first thing I noticed was how cheesy the writing was. It was so cheesy at the start. I couldn't stand it. I felt like I had to force myself to keep reading because it has to be good if people are so obsessed with it, right? It had to get better at some point. So I pushed myself to keep going. And the writing did get better, not by much in the first book. The writing is not great, I have to say. I'm sorry. I'm a translator and I've studied languages my entire life, and the writing is not that great. The author uses the dialogue between the characters to tell us information. So they would be saying to each other things that aren't very natural. Like, people wouldn't be talking to each other and saying these things that are supposed to be obvious in their world. It's like a tell, not show approach. So let's say they're talking about the history of the kingdom, whatever. I'm giving a random example. And they're talking about the history of the kingdom, and they all know this history of the kingdom, and they start telling each other the history in a way that is so forced, as if to tell the audience the history of the world instead of using other elements to show us this history. It just felt unnatural. I don't know. Anyway, that was the start of the book. And the main character at the beginning, I was not really fond of her. But then, as much as I wanted to hate this series going into it, I actually kind of got hooked because it's a very fast paced book. It's action packed. It has dragons. I mean, dragons. It has dragons and dragon riders and like a military academy. This is something I didn't really like. Like, the plot is so predictable. It's been done so many times. A military academy, and they have a kingdom, and they're fighting another kingdom, and then the other kingdom turns out to be the good guys, and they are actually serving the bad guys, and it's just very predictable. Nevertheless, I did enjoy it. It was not the best book I've ever read, all of the series actually. At some point, the world building gets very chaotic, and it feels like the author is just throwing random descriptions and backstories at us, and it's not created in a cohesive way where you're introduced to an entire world and you discover it piece by piece. It's just choppy pieces of information thrown at you. And most of the time, especially during the third book, I would say, I think the second and the third book, I felt lost most of the time when it came to spaces or scenes or locations or stuff like that, because it felt very vague, but at the same time, I don't know. It wasn't the best series I've ever read. It was good. It was very entertaining. I'm not obsessed with it, as Booktok has sworn that I would be. But I mean, it's an entertaining read. And the final book series for today's video is the Folk of the Air series, or The Cruel Prince, if you've heard of it. I personally really love this series. It gives me this wholesome feeling whenever I read it. Some people don't really like it that much, and I can see why. I agree. I mean, it's YA, it's young adult, so it's not as spicy or action packed and all that. But I feel it's so well written. The world is a bit smaller, and the characters are fewer than these other series. But the beautiful thing about the series is that it doesn't need a vast universe with a billion kingdoms and people and nations. The few elements in this world are all so well written and so complex and so beautifully delivered and introduced that you don't really need all of the extra fluff. Like, for example, in Fourth Wing, sure, we have a billion kingdoms, but they're not well developed, so who cares about all that? In the Folk of the Air, we have this quaint little world, this fairy tale world, and it's so well developed that you feel so immersed in it, and there are no incongruencies. It's all so cohesive, and you just sink perfectly into it. And the characters are so lovable. I just love the characters, Jude and Cardan. I think they're so well written. They're very complex but relatable. Jude is so vicious. I love it. She's a liar, she's vicious, she's brutal, and you relate because her world made her that way and she had to do that to survive. It's just, yeah, I love this book. I really would recommend it. It's different than the others. It's YA again. So to set your expectations, it's not going to be the best storyline maybe on earth, but it's very well written and I would really recommend it. And that's all I have for today. In the next video, I might unpack some more famous fantasy books, or let me know what you would like to see more of on this channel. And until then, keep reading like the nerds that you are.